All right, welcome everybody to the October 2021 Be Strong Talk, hosted by the local Josephine County nonprofit Grassroots. And if there's anybody on the line, I think there may be one or two that haven't seen one of these before. We do these monthly on the second Thursday of each month generally, and we've been doing these on Zoom for a while. Seems to be a pretty convenient way to get together and share stories and share some comments with each other. So we do record all of these, and you can go to YouTube and just type in Grassroots Be Strong, and you'll see some of our past monthly guests. But tonight we have Christina Dotson, who's here with us to share her Be Strong story. And Christina, without further ado, I'll just let you go ahead and take it away.
Okay. My name is Christina Dotson. I am a grateful recovering addict. I have 724 days clean and sober today. I'm going to start out my story from the beginning, from my childhood, and then I'm going to move on to today. So growing up, my dad was an alcoholic. I remember my parents fighting all the time, screaming at each other. My mom couldn't get jobs because my dad was always jealous that there would be men there. So she'd have to quit her job. And I remember that happening over and over and over again growing up. My mom always tried to get my dad to stop drinking, and he would stop for a period of time and then he'd start again. The physical abuse was behind doors. They never did that in front of us. It was just the screaming, I remember. My dad, I was about 13 when I turned 13 years old. My dad started getting very verbally abusive towards me, and I lashed back with anger, and we physically fought a lot, and my mom would get in the middle of it and she would always get hurt. That was the beginning of my teenage years, and that's when I started running away a lot. I started experimenting with alcohol and pills and meth, and I moved out when I was 17. I met my then husband. We moved out, we got an apartment together. We did meth, but it was only like once every 4 to 5 months. And then we ended up doing pills together. Fast forward to 2004, my addiction to morphine and methadone and Percocet and Vicodin started. I started getting Vicodin from the doctor, and when I would run out of my Vicodin, I would buy it off the streets, and I started getting payday loans out to feed that habit. And my husband ended up joining in with me, so the habit became double. So I'm going to go to 2005. I got pregnant with my son. Me and my mom were working at a collection agency together. And so I had my son in 2005. Me and my mom were working together. In 2007, my mom filed for divorce from my father. She filed for divorce from my father. It was 27 years of marriage that they were together. And my father could not live without her. He didn't know how to live without her. They were together when she was 16. So 27 years later, he didn't know how to live without her. She took it upon herself to file divorce. She was sick of all the abuse that he was doing, she couldn't take it anymore. So sorry. So she ended up filing for a divorce, and I remember my dad begging for me to beg my mom to take him back. And at that point, my mom was just absolutely fed up. She was done. She didn't want to do it anymore. At that time, she had met her boyfriend. After the divorce, she met a man that she told me to hide from my father. And so I never told my brother. I have a younger brother. I never told him. And so on May 4th, let's see. So when my mom got the divorce from my father. My father got a trailer and he moved to Merlin, which was like a half an hour away from Grants Pass, where we were at. And my mom was in the house and she was trying to sell it, and she was working 2 jobs. And she had asked me if I would do an open house for her on May 5th. And she asked me to come over after work, and she was going to show me like what to say and, you know, what to do when people come. So I went over there with my son and my husband, and my brother showed up, and my dad was calling. He was calling back to back. And my mom, he was screaming at my mom, and my mom ended up putting the phone on speakerphone. And he said, "I hope you know our daughter's a slut." And she goes, "I hope you know your daughter just heard every word you said." And the line went dead. So I ended up finishing up with my mom that night. I gave her a kiss and a hug on the porch. And I ended up going home. But before I went home, I asked her if she wanted to come home and sleep on my couch, because I was feeling kind of like eerie about it. You know what I mean? Like, my dad was saying some pretty brutal stuff to her, and she said, "No, Chrissy, your father's not going to hurt me." And I said, "Okay." And I gave her a hug and a kiss, and she kissed Damien, my son. He was about 2 years old at the time. And I ended up going home. And so as soon as I got home to my house, my father called my landline, and my ex-husband answered the phone, and he said, "Tell Chrissy I'm sorry, I didn't mean what I said." And my ex-husband told him, "I want you to call back in the morning when you're sober." And he had the phone like this, so I was able to hear everything. And he goes, "Just tell Chrissy I'm sorry." And the line went dead. And then at about 2:30 in the morning, I ended up falling asleep on the couch, which I never did. And about 2:30 in the morning, I got a knock at my door. And usually I don't cry. I'm pretty good about just saying it. So I get a knock at the door, and there's 3 people there. And 2 of them are police officers. And they told me that they asked me, to sit down, and I said, "Okay." As soon as they asked me to sit down, I noticed that my mom's purse was in their hands. And honestly, like at that time, I just thought it was like a car accident or something, and they were okay, you know? He said, "There's been an accident with both your parents." When I sat down, and so apparently, after we had left that night, my dad came to the house, and he woke my mom up out of dead sleep. She was sleeping on the couch, and he cornered her in the kitchen, and she called 911, and she put the phone down, and he pulled out a gun, and she tried to use the fridge door to block the bullets. So when she put the phone down, everything was recorded. Everything was recorded. He ended up shooting her 5 times from her neck to her belly. Like, she was super tiny. So her body fell between the wall and the fridge, and the cops were in the driveway when it happened. And they tried to break out the light before my dad saw them. And by the time they got to the back, my dad had already shot himself in the head. When they moved their bodies, bullets on both sides of my dad's pockets were falling out. So that week, let's see. So after that happened, let's fast forward back to the cops sitting on my couch. They asked me if I wanted to tell my brother or if if I wanted to tell my brother or if I wanted them to. And I said, well, can you guys come with me over there to tell him? And they said yes. So I drove with the cops over to my brother's house. This was, I don't know, like 4 o'clock by then. And so I sat in the car when they went to my brother's door. I sat in the car. I didn't want to see his face. I didn't want to see his reaction. And they ended up telling him, and he comes outside and we both fall on the ground and we're just screaming. So then at that point, the cops ended up leaving. I was with my brother, and then we had to tell my dad's parents. My mom's parents didn't live in Oregon, but my dad's parents lived right around the corner. So we went to my dad's parents' house, and we went to my dad's parents' house, and my aunt was living over there too. She was taking care of my grandma and grandpa, and my grandma comes out first, which is my dad's mom. And she's like, what happened? And we told her through the fence. They had to unlock the fence. And she started screaming my mom's name. And my grandpa had diabetes, so he didn't have any arms or legs, but he could hear all this happening. They opened the gate for us. We ended up going in my grandpa's room, and we ended up all in there on the floor. When we told my grandpa, he fell out of bed. And we were all just crying. They blocked off the streets. Me and my brother had to clean up the murder. We hired somebody to clean the murder-suicide up, but they did a crappy job. And when me and my brother went in there, my dad's brains were still on the ceiling. And there were bullet holes in the fridge. And like, I just kept like replaying it for years. For years, I was putting myself like in every scene of what happened as if I was there. I couldn't help it, like seeing the aftermath. And like, we cremated both of them in a week, that week. My mom's work, we had worked together at a collection agency, and they all came together, and we had a memorial. We had them separately. We had my dad's at the Mormon church, and there was like 20 people that came, if that. And my mom's, we had at St. Anne's, and there was hundreds of people. There was firefighters, police officers. So after that, within 2 weeks, me and my brother got life insurance for my mom. We both got $45,000 a piece, and an extra $15,000 because it was accidental on her side. We got nothing from my dad because it was suicide. So my brother ended up taking the money, and he built a house, and I blew all my money and I self-medicated. That's when my addiction to pills and meth started really, really heavy. I ended up losing the house that we were living in because I was taking out payday loans and I couldn't do it anymore. It was catching up to me. So we ended up moving to Weimer, which was my husband's dad's house, and he had passed away. So he left us the cabin, and it had no running water, no power. But you know, it was somewhere to go. We didn't have anywhere to go. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter. And one of my friends anonymously reported, because we didn't have any running water or power, like we were in a little tiny room upstairs in the wintertime with a propane heater trying to keep the heat in. And with our son, who was 3 at that time, all of us were just huddled in the room with a propane heater. The walls were turning black. We were cooking on a barbecue outside. It was just a bad living situation, and he didn't want to do anything to make it better. So one of my friends ended up reporting to DHS, and they ended up coming out and they escorted me and my son off the property, and they told Jason that he could stay. We didn't have anywhere to go, so we went to his mom's house, and that's where I have my daughter. It was about 3 months after I had my daughter, I cheated on my husband with a man that lived in Portland, that I've known since I was 13. And he promised me the world. He promised me everything that I wasn't getting from my husband. So I ended up leaving my husband. I divorced him. I ended up taking our daughter to Portland, and he ended up keeping our son. I wrote down a little bit of notes too. So I ended up moving to Portland with my daughter, and I was addicted to pills really bad at that time. And I couldn't find pills in Portland. I didn't really know anybody, but I could find meth. So that's when I started my heavy relationship with meth. I hid it the best I could from my boyfriend. He didn't do it. There's incidents that I remember that I don't see how he didn't know, but yeah. Anyways, so I was with him for about 4 years in Portland. We had our apartment together, and I would leave in the middle of the night, and I wouldn't tell him, and I would leave my daughter, and I would go meet up with my drug dealer, or I was really into those Salvation Army drop-ins, so I would like get stuff from there and try to sell it for money for drugs. One night, it was the last straw. I ended up going to a feed and farm store, and it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had my drug dealer with me, and I stole rose bushes. And as before I even got out of the driveway, I heard the cops behind me. And he said he was laughing at me the whole time. He ended up pulling me over. I was on railroad tracks. He wouldn't let me move the car. I had to wake up my boyfriend, who didn't even know I was gone. My daughter was sleeping. He had to wake up his other baby mama and come get his car, because I ended up going to jail. And they ended up watching my daughter. Anyways, it was a big mess. And that's when he ended up leaving me and my daughter. And he left us with the apartment, and he left with a black trash bag, and that was it. So after that happened, I called Jason, who was Jasmine's father, and I said, you need to come get Jasmine in case I become homeless. And that's exactly what happened. The second he took Jazzy, my apartment turned into a trap house. I had people coming and going. I ended up leaving for 10 minutes, and the landlord locked the house, and all my stuff was in there. So I ended up losing everything. That's when I started using a needle. That's when I started using a needle, and everything from then just went south. I was sleeping behind dumpsters. I didn't have clean clothes. I wasn't showering. I was selling my body to get what I needed. It didn't matter who it was, as long as they had it, you know? And then So the only person at that point that would talk to me was my aunt from Grants Pass. I had burned my bridges with everybody else. Um, so the last straw was I begged my aunt for a Greyhound ticket back to Grants Pass. And she agreed to it. And I was so desperate and hungry and lonely and broken. And I left Portland with not even shoes on my feet, but I was able to get on that bus and get back home. So, okay, when I was in Portland, it was about 2 years into it. I just want to rewind a little bit. It was 2 years into it. I had congestive heart failure, and this was before I started shooting. I had congestive heart failure, and it got to the point where I couldn't even zip up my pants, and I knew there was something wrong. So I went to the doctor, and that's what they told me. And by the time I went to the hospital, my heart was pumping at 6%. I should have been dead. But that didn't stop me. I was still trying to hit my meth pipe in the hospital. I was still trying to manipulate my boyfriend. I ended up telling him because they wanted me to UA, and I was scared. I was so scared. And I told him that there was only weed in my system, but if he didn't UA for me, then I was going to lose my daughter, because I didn't want him to find meth in my system. So he ended up peeing for me. They didn't ask anything about that, but as if it wasn't bad enough that my heart was pumping at 6%, I was still trying to hit the pipe in the bathroom. That's how desperate my addiction had gotten. I didn't care. So I was hospitalized for 2 weeks, and then they let me out, and I stopped taking my medication, and I sent myself right back in the hospital. The second time I stayed for another 2 weeks, and then they let me out again. Excuse me. And they let me out again. I was still doing drugs. I didn't care. So I didn't have congestive heart failure. Like, it didn't continue, but I continued to have these attacks where my heart would beat 250, 230 beats a minute. And the only thing that would stop it was them shocking it. And I have lived years with that happening. I would just go to the hospital, get it shocked, and be fine, and I get out and I do drugs. I never saw my kids, really. Like, I just wanted to add that heart thing in there because that was really important to me. So I continued to have those attacks. After I came to Grants Pass, I ended up meeting a drug dealer, and we started a relationship. We started the most toxic relationship I've ever been in. He ended up, it was, I want to say, a month into our relationship is when he started physically hurting me. And I really have never been physically hurt by a man until him. But he had the drugs, he supplied the drugs. I never called the cops on him. It beat me with a hammer. He beat himself with a hammer. He made me watch him after he hurt me, saying, "Do you like this? Do you like this?" And it was super bad. My kids ended up getting, so there was one night, I just wanted to say this. There was one night where me and my daughter were in the car, and he was in the passenger seat. He ended up getting out, and he realized that I had the bag of drugs, and I locked the car because he was being mean, and he ended up jumping on the hood of the car, and he scared the shit out of my daughter. He scared the life out of her, and she started screaming. And I finally had opened the door, and he got in, and he went to go hit for me, and he accidentally hit her. But I made her believe that it was me trying to get him off. Little things like that, like, I am so ashamed that I continued that relationship after something happening like that to my kid. My addiction had grips, and I couldn't see a way out. So she still tells me stories, like, she remembers everything that happened, and it breaks my heart. It absolutely breaks my heart. So 2 years, it was about 2 years after that incident, we were still together, and we ended up getting an apartment together. We worked across the street at a car lot. I sold the cars and he detailed the cars. We worked there for about 2 years. And we had an apartment that was right across the street. It was ideal, you know. And then we got a raid on our house. We had a raid on our house. I'd never been in anything like that. I went to go take him to check in with his PO, and he told me to wait at the library, which is like a couple blocks away from the PO's office. So I was waiting there, and I get a phone call from his PO on his phone, and he's like, so I want you, wherever you're at, I want you to stay where you're at, and I don't want you to move. He'll be out in about an hour. And I was like, what the? So we had just re-upped. So I ended up not staying there. I went straight home to try to hide the drugs. And when I got home, the raid team was there. They were waiting. And they told me that I couldn't go in the house. And of course, I had drugs in my bra. I had rigs in my car. At that point, it was over, you know. And they said that he's on his way with his PO. So he ended up coming back with his PO. They ended up tearing our house apart. They got a girl cop to come search me, and it was right on Front Street. So it was, everybody was standing by watching. And so after all of that, we didn't get arrested. We go back in the apartment and we're like, what the hell just happened? What happened? The mattresses were torn upside down. It was horrible. I've never been in anything like that. And the fact that we didn't get arrested, I was like, what the? Okay, so we got secret indictments. And they didn't arrest us that night. But we, right after that, voluntarily put both of ourselves into rehab, but not before we went to Reno to get married, in case something like that happened. So we ended up going to Reno, getting married. And then we ended up going to rehab, and I went to On Track in Grants Pass, and he went to Klamath Falls Transformations, and we were doing rehab at the same time. And secret indictments hit when we were in rehab. And I was able to take care of mine because I was in Josephine County, but he couldn't take care of his because he was in Klamath, which is a different county. So he had to wait until he graduated. I ended up graduating first. And when I went to the rehab that I went to, I was talking to my counselor, and she said, wait a minute, like, I think the 911 operator that took the call the night your mom died works here. And I didn't quite know what to say. I did wait until I had a little bit of recovery under my belt, being there, before I went to her and I asked her questions that I wanted to ask her. And I was able to do that. I ended up asking her at the end, like, what happened, and she, like, on her end, and she said that my dad was perfectly calm the whole time, and my mom was just screaming, please don't, I love you. And so that was like constantly replaying in my head once she told me that, you know. What was I saying? So we ended up going to rehab, graduated, and then he ended up, after he got graduated, he ended up going to prison. He went to prison for a year, and I was opted. I had the choice to go into drug court or do 15 days community service, and I chose to go into drug court. I knew that I needed that accountability, especially with him not being there, you know. I was doing everything for the first time alone. I knew I could do it. I just, you know, everything was new to me. So reaching out, you know, it was hard. So I ended up opting into drug court, and drug court absolutely has saved my life ever since. I ended up graduating treatment on my dad's birthday. That was when my 90 days was up. So if that wasn't more of a sign that I was exactly where I needed to be at the right time, um, I don't know what is. I believe that's a sign. So he ended up going to prison for the year. It was about a year and a half. And right after I got out of rehab, I hit the ground running. I ended up opening a recovery page on Facebook called Recovery Warriors Around the World. I started making recovery videos. It was before and after pictures of people in recovery in Josephine County. And I got such an outpour of positive response from that. I had other people reaching out. For me to put them in the videos. And then I was asked to do the overdose awareness walk memorial video, which was a complete honor. I ended up doing that. But, like, it was about 10 months into it. Like I had that pink cloud, like, I'm doing this, the pink cloud, like you're on top of the world, you're on fire for your recovery. And then I ended up relapsing. I was hanging out with the wrong people, thinking that it would be okay. But as soon as I got around them, like, I was like, can I please? And it didn't take much, and I ended up getting high. But I can tell you that my relapse was only one day. I went straight to the drug court team, and I let them know exactly what I had done, because I wanted a new way of life. I didn't want to live like that anymore. And tell you what, that high sucked. That was that was that was the first high after. No, it was not the same at all. I remember going the next day after I relapsed to Choices, which is a counseling center, and I just remember crying and saying, what did I do? There had to be something else in that. It wasn't just meth. I mean, that's how bad I felt. It took like a good week and a half for me to come back to normal. It was horrible. But anyways, so that was on 10/22/19, that's my clean date. So this coming up Friday, I'll have almost 2 years clean and sober. I have done multiple interviews with Richie Weber. Amanda Marker is a big one. I'm the admin for a couple of recovery groups on Facebook. I'm very, very involved with the online recovery community, especially with my Recovery Warriors Around the World. That's like my baby. We have 2,600 people in the group now. So I'm very, very proud of that group. As far as my heart goes, I still had those attacks, and it was, I want to say, a couple months ago. I started having those attacks, and they were happening like 3 times a day, and I was having my heart shocked, and it got to the point where my heart was so irritated from being shocked, it just wasn't stopping. So they finally got me in for surgery. I ended up having to go a half-hour away to Medford because Grants Pass wouldn't do anything. I had a friend take me to the hospital there, and we sat in the waiting room, and he didn't leave my side the whole time. And those are the things, like, in recovery today that are super important to me, that people don't leave your side. You have genuine friends that are there, that want to help you, that want to support you. So I ended up having the heart surgery. They admitted me, and I had, it was a catheter cardiac ablation. So they went in through my groin area, and they went down my throat, and they cauterized apart the heart that kept going into the attacks. So they cauterized it 8 times. Right after the surgery, I had one episode where I had to go back and get my heart shocked, and I was devastated. I was like, it didn't work. And he said, no, it takes up to 3 months before it takes full effect. And I've been fine ever since. And like, my heart will start doing those attacks, and it'll correct itself, which is a blessing. Like, I don't want it. I hope my doctor's not watching, but like I can drink a cup of coffee and not think my heart's gonna explode. That's pretty important. That was huge for me. So just real quick, my husband ended up, when he got out of prison, he ended up hiding relapses from me and I remember getting on one knee and begging and crying and pleading, please, 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 please get clean. Please stop doing this. If you don't, I am going to turn around and I'm never going to look back. And that's exactly what I did. I chose my recovery. He kept doing it. And that wasn't a road that I wanted to be down. And I was sick of it. And that leaving that relationship was hard. It was so hard. There was so much trauma bonding and just it was hard. He didn't physically hurt me like when he got out of prison and he was clean for a couple of months, but we had the whole history of him using and beating the hell out of me all the time. So like I finally pulled my big girl britches up and I did what I had to do for my recovery. I am grateful that I have drug court on my side. I am now a drug court mentor. I'm pretty proud of that. I work full-time at O'Reilly Auto Parts, which I love. I'm a delivery driver. And I live in the Oxford house. It's an Oxford house for women, and it's the first one in Josephine County, and I'm pretty proud of that. This housing, we have about 12 women that live here and some children. And I can tell you from living in other transitional housing that this housing is completely different. It's democratically ran, it's a sisterhood, it's a unity, it's strong women in recovery that have each other's back no matter what. The good times, the bad times, and it makes the house run so much smoother, you know. I'm very grateful that I was able to be a part and that I am a part of Oxford. So yeah, that's my story. I don't know how much time is left, but yeah, that's my story. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you so much for telling that story, Christina. Well, I've got a few questions, but I'm just gonna open it up to everybody else. We've got quite a few people live joining us this evening, and so if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to unmute your line and fire away.
May I? I know it's probably gonna sound maybe a little silly, but I live in several women's houses throughout. I'm working in the recovery community, and I hear a lot of stories, but yours in particular, wow, you're doing the deal, even though you kind of have like every reason not to. You're doing it. I just commend you. And I thank you for sharing with me tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, Amanda. Anybody else?
I'm so proud of you. Thank you for sharing your story and made me cry again. I think you're doing amazing, you're doing awesome, and I'm so proud of you and so blessed to be in your life, and I hope we can continue to be sisters in recovery, and I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
So, Christina, that's the first time I've known you for a long time. That's the first time that I've heard this whole story. And I'm like, I cried too. I'm super glad and I'm happy that you're here in Oxford with us. And thank you for sharing that. I can't imagine how hard that was for you to share it to people, especially people that you live with too, that we didn't know the story. So thank you. I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Christina,
Hi,
I
Taylor.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for reaching out to me, and glad that you're here today. And thank you for sharing your vulnerability. And I'm really proud of you. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
First.
Hi, Christina. I'm Dawn. I wanted to commend you on everything that you've been through in your life. I know it hasn't been easy. I've related so much to your story that it's not funny. And, you know, I really commend you for leaving the abusive relationship and being able to put your recovery first. Me also being in recovery, I appreciate you as a sister, and I keep doing the deal. You're doing exactly what God wants you to do. And keep sharing your story because you're a powerful woman.
Thank
And
you.
you have support.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
Christina, I really, girl, I'm super proud of you. Knowledge that I think that you didn't acknowledge enough how hard it is to leave a trauma bond and to leave that relationship. And I just really want to acknowledge that again for you, because you deserve that. Everything that you've gone through and everything that you've overcome and that you continue to overcome is absolutely phenomenal. And there's no way that the people in here can tell you that enough. There's just no way. And the power that you exhibited tonight is exactly the power that you've had the whole time. And I'm just so freaking proud of you, girl, because you're pointing it in the right direction, right? Because that's what we want to do, is point it in the right direction. So good or bad, man, you got power, and tonight you honored the power that you have in the way that we always want that to happen. So just keep doing you, girl. Congratulations.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Hi, Christina.
Hey.
I just wanted to say that I hadn't heard your whole story, although you have shared parts of it with me since we've been friends. And I just want to let you know that I think you're an amazing woman. You're creative, and you have the biggest heart. You've been there for me recently in some really hard times. And even though I myself, admittedly, I do not have an issue with drugs, I struggle to keep the hope for the people in my life that do struggle with it and are still out there on the streets doing the things that we hope they'll return from. And your story just gave me a lot of hope that that could be possible again for my own son. So thank you for that. I love you.
I love you. As long as he's still breathing, there's still hope.
Absolutely.
Hey, Christina. Shanae.
Okay.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just got that stuff you can't teach, you know? You got that lived experience. I've had the pleasure of being able to walk with you on your journey, and it's been incredible watching you grow and, you know, watching you continue to do the next right thing. And then all the people that you help with your page and in recovery. It's been incredible to watch and be by your side and get to experience that with you, and the growth and the aha moments and the, you know, just everything that you do, you know. And Amanda was on point with that, you know.
She got me when she started talking.
Yeah, dude, I know, every time. But you know, we people can't tell you enough that, you know what I mean, what you've overcome is you know what I mean, that's amazing that you've overcome that and that you stay clean and that you continue to do the next right thing. So I just want to tell you that I love you and I'm super proud of you, and keep winning.
Love you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Christina, I just want to tell you that I'm really thankful and I'm honored that I've been given the opportunity to get to know you. I just want I just appreciate you so much. Being transparent, super vulnerable, and sharing your story, because I know it's not an easy one to share. But you have so much strength about you, you know, and you give that strength to other people. And I know that you'll continue to do it in your recovery. You do it for the rest of the girls in that household, and you even give us strength like in other locations that you go. You are a miracle, and you're a warrior, and you are a gift. And I'm so proud of you, and I have no doubt in my mind that your mother is so incredibly proud of you. I'm super thankful for you. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. I feel like sharing my story, like even if I help one person, it's worth it, you know, and my mom would be proud.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I remember when I first met you at On Track, and I was also newly sober too. And your story, Christina, like there's one saying in it, and it's don't pick up no matter what. And you're doing exactly that. And you're such a big motivation to get sober. Like there's absolutely no excuse to pick up, and you really show that, and I'm super proud of you, and I really hope you're doing great. But you really touch a lot of hearts, and I know sometimes some days are super low and others are really great, but I promise you're gonna get through it. I literally follow you on Facebook all the time, so I know. But I wish you the best of luck in life. I really do.
Thank you, Jenna.
You're welcome.
I love you.
I love you too.
This is what it's about. One addict helping another. Absolutely. This right here was worth it, you know?
All right, would anybody else like to make a comment or ask Christina a question this evening?
I actually wanted to hear what are like some of the things that that keep you clean, right? And that keep you staying strong as a person in recovery.
I had to surrender. I had to admit that I had a problem, and I found a sponsor. I actually went through a couple of sponsors before I found somebody that I'm able to feel comfortable enough to share what I need to share, as far as like working the steps. I work a program, and I never forget, this is what helps me when I get down to my lowest. I remember living in a van. I remember living in a tent on the side of the river. I remember living in that tent. I remember it raining. I remember curled up in a ball, crying, trying to get high, and I couldn't get a vein. And I'm curled up in a ball, missing my children, hungry, desperate, lonely. That's where I do not want to be again. I never forget where I came from. I never forget how I got to where I'm at. I had no self-respect. The feeling of worthlessness was overwhelming to me. So that's exactly where I'm at right now. I found a sponsor. I'm working my steps, and I want to be able to get the freedom from my step work that everybody says, like, when you work your steps, you're going to feel this and you're going to feel this and you're going to have relief. And that's what I want to feel. And that's what keeps me going every single day. When I do feel some type of way, I reach out to my sponsor. I don't give it a second thought. That's what I do. That's what I have to do to keep myself safe. Yeah. So, yeah, I would say that just reaching out to my sponsor, never forgetting where I come from, and helping other people helps me. Going to meetings, working my program, being vigilant in my recovery.
Thank you. Those were all like phenomenal answers.
That was going to be my main question, is to get you to elaborate on what keeps you strong. Janae knows our monthly drill here.
I reach out. That was one of the hardest things in the beginning of my recovery that I had to do, but I did it. I didn't like it. It was uncomfortable, but when I was uncomfortable is when I grew the most, you know. And reaching out to the correct people instead of the wrong people. The mentors, that you have so much help and support in drug court. On top of that, you have people around every corner. And even not being in drug court, if you reach out to the people in the meetings, if you reach out to your sponsor, you know, you're going to stay on the right path. If you're vigilant about your recovery, that's just what I'm doing right now. That helps me every single day. I pray every morning. And that's something that took me a long time, is to get used to my faith. Like, after that happened with my parents, I was very mad at God. Why would he do something like this? Why would he do something like this? And now today, God is my biggest strength. My children are my biggest strength. Being in recovery and having my daughter come up to me and showed me the YouTube videos that I posted that were my recovery videos when I first started making them. And she paused on my before and after picture. And she's like, Mom, I just put your name in YouTube and look what pulled up. And she paused on it. And she's like, I'm so proud of you. She's 9 years old. That helps me keep going. She tells me that she's proud of me. My son tells me he's proud of me. That keeps me going. And, you know, being a present mother is the most honorable thing, I think, to this day. Being able to be there for them when I wasn't before, and everything that I put them through. And my daughter constantly saying that I'm her hero. I don't feel like a hero, but I'm her hero. And I know that if I was using, I wouldn't be there, and that wouldn't have been said, you know? So yeah, being a mother, staying vigilant with my recovery, reaching out to people when I'm feeling some type of way, not sitting in it, being able to pick myself up. Like this last weekend, I had a day on Saturday where I ignored my daughter's calls. I ignored everybody's calls. I fell off the face of the earth for a day. And I ended up reaching out to my sponsor, but I reached out to her the next day, and like I was feeling guilt and like shame, and just like, no, like, you obviously needed it. So she definitely made me feel better about it. I ended up spending the rest of the next day with my daughter, and everything was fine. But definitely reaching out. Do not sit in it.
Hey, Christina, this is Archie. And I just want to thank you so much for you sharing tonight. I think the last thing that you said really resonated with me, as far as not sitting in it, you know, getting up, moving, you know, doing something. And I really appreciate you sharing your story. You're definitely strong, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, any final comments or questions? Well, thanks, Christina. Again, great job telling your story. we will be putting this up on YouTube and up on our Facebook page, which is just if you go to Facebook, just type in Grace Roots Pathways to Wellness, you'll find our page. But since you're better connected on Facebook than we are, sounds like, let's see if we can set a record for YouTube views for.
Let's do it.
And let's get
do
the
it.
word out because this story is worth hearing, and it's
Thank
we
you.
had a number of people join us live tonight, but I think a number of other people should hear your story as well. Great story and great job telling it.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate it.
fantastic job in recovery. Keep up the good
Thank you
work.
guys for coming.
All right, we'll see you next month, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you
All right.
guys.